I never thought my 20 years as a detective would matter much in the quiet streets of Oak Ridge Estates. Most days, my work heading the County Crimes Against Animals Task Force kept me far from this peaceful suburb with its manicured lawns and coordinated mailboxes. My modest two-story home was my sanctuary, a place removed from the darkness I witnessed daily investigating animal abuse cases. Everything changed 3 months ago when my 17-year-old niece Amber arrived at my doorstep. My brother and his wife had accepted sudden job transfers to Singapore, but Amber, 7 months pregnant and fighting anxiety, could not go. She needed stability. She needed support. She needed to finish her senior year without uprooting her life. And so she came to live with me, bringing only a suitcase of clothes, her prenatal vitamins, and Mittens, her emotional support cat. Mittens was not just a pet. The small calico with mismatched eyes was officially registered as an emotional support animal. The paperwork from Amber's therapist explained how the cat helped regulate her anxiety, especially important during her high-risk pregnancy. I watched their bond grow stronger each day as Amber whispered her fears to Mittens while stroking her soft fur. Our neighborhood seemed the perfect place for Amber to prepare for motherhood. Quiet streets for morning walks, a park nearby for fresh air, friendly neighbors who smiled and waved. I did notice how uniformly every home appeared, the same approved color schemes, identical mailboxes, regulated lawn ornaments. The Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association ruled with exacting standards, but I had always followed their guidelines without complaint. That Tuesday afternoon, Amber was reading a pregnancy book on our front porch swing, Mittens curled beside her. A few cat toys lay scattered nearby. The spring sunshine bathed them in golden light as I pulled into the driveway after work. It was a perfect moment of peace. Then a shadow fell across the porch. "Excuse me, but pets are not allowed in communal view according to Section 12, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws." The voice was sharp, commanding. A woman stood at the bottom of our steps, perhaps 50, with highlighted blonde hair cut into a severe bob. Her cream pantsuit looked expensive, her jewelry tasteful but substantial. A designer purse hung from one arm, a leather-bound community rule book visible inside it. Her smile never reached her eyes. "I am Diane Winters, Oak Ridge Estates HOA president," the woman said, extending a manicured hand that I reluctantly shook. "And you must be our new resident." Her gaze fell on Amber's pregnant belly with undisguised disapproval. "This is my niece Amber," I said. "She has moved in temporarily, and Mittens is her registered emotional support animal." Diane's eyebrows arched dramatically. "Emotional support animal? How convenient. Well, Detective Reynolds, even support animals must adhere to community standards. No toys visible from the street. No evidence of animal habitation. These are the rules that maintain our property values." She tapped her clipboard. "Consider this a friendly reminder." As she walked away, her heels clicking on the sidewalk, I noticed how she paused to photograph our porch with her phone. Something about her demeanor sent a chill through me. In 20 years investigating crimes, I had developed an instinct for trouble. As Amber clutched Mittens closer to her chest, I realized this seemingly ordinary neighborhood conflict had the potential to become something far worse. I just did not know how much worse it would get. The first violation notice arrived 3 days later. A plain white envelope bearing the Oak Ridge Estates HOA logo slipped under our front door sometime during the night. Inside, a formal citation for unapproved window treatments visible from street view. The curtains in Amber's room were apparently 2 shades darker than the approved eggshell white permitted in the community guidelines. "This is ridiculous," Amber said, her voice trembling slightly as she held the notice. Mittens rubbed against her ankles, sensing her distress. They were already here when I moved in. I sighed, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Do not worry, I will order new ones today. But the notices did not stop. Within 2 weeks, our violation count reached 7. Garden hose improperly stored, unauthorized plant pot on front step, mail retrieved 4 hours past delivery. Each envelope bore the same signature, Diane Winters, HOA President, written in perfect penmanship with blue ink. The most concerning violation arrived after Amber had placed a small water dish for Mittens on our back patio. Evidence of non-human habitation visible from community spaces, the notice read. First warning regarding unauthorized animal presence. I immediately phoned Diane, explaining again about Amber's emotional support animal documentation. Documentation does no. T override our covenant, Detective Reynolds, Diane replied, her voice dripping with false sweetness. The board can make exceptions, but we would need to review the situation at our monthly meeting. You are welcome to attend and present your case. The HOA meeting was held in the sterile community center, 30 homeowners seated in perfectly aligned chairs. Amber insisted on coming despite my concerns. She wore a loose sundress over her growing belly, her blonde hair pulled back, clutching a folder containing Mittens' official documentation. When our turn came to speak, Diane gestured toward the podium with exaggerated politeness. The board recognizes Detective Reynolds and guest regarding petition for animal exception. I began explaining the situation professionally, outlining the legal protections for emotional support animals. Diane interrupted frequently with procedural objections. The other board members, 4 older homeowners who deferred to her every comment, nodded in unison like well-trained puppets. Then Diane raised her hand, silencing me mid-sentence. While we sympathize with your situation, Detective, there is another matter of community standards we must address. She turned her gaze directly to Amber. Oak Ridge Estates was founded on family values, traditional family values. The presence of an unmarried pregnant teenager projects an image inconsistent with those values. Gasps echoed through the room. Amber's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. That is completely inappropriate, I said, my voice dangerously low, and irrelevant to our petition regarding Mittens. Everything that affects our community image is relevant, Diane replied coolly. Perhaps we should table this discussion until next month, after further review. Amber fled the room, sobbing. Several homeowners looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. As I followed my niece out, I caught Diane's satisfied smile. This was not about rules. This was about power. The next morning, I found an unmarked envelope in our mailbox containing photographs. My blood ran cold as I flipped through them, Amber sleeping in her bedroom, Amber eating dinner at our kitchen table, Amber studying at her desk. Each image had violations circled in red marker, a soda can on the nightstand, curtains open after 9 p.m., improper desk lamp placement. Someone had been watching us, photographing us through our windows. That night, as Amber slept, I installed security cameras covering every angle of our property. My police instincts were on high alert. Something was very wrong in Oak Ridge Estates. The following morning, another envelope appeared, slipped under our door during the night despite our new security system. Inside was a simple typed note. Animals not properly contained will be removed for the safety of the community. No signature, no letterhead, just a threat I could not ignore. The morning had started peacefully enough. I left for work at 7, after confirming Amber had her prenatal appointment at 10. Mittens had been curled at the foot of her bed, purring contentedly as I peeked in to say goodbye. Everything seemed normal, routine, safe. My phone rang at 11:42 a.m. Amber's voice came through in broken sobs. "Uncle Mike, Mittens is gone. I cannot find her anywhere. I got back from my appointment and the back door was open a little and she is gone." I tried to calm her, suggested she check all of Mittens' favorite hiding spots again. Cats are notorious for finding impossible places to nap. But the panic in Amber's voice told me this was different. Mittens never wandered, she stayed close to Amber always, their bond unbreakable. "Stay there, do not stress yourself. I am on my way home," I said, already grabbing my keys and signaling to my partner that I had a family emergency. Dark clouds gathered as I pulled into our driveway. Rain had just started to fall, fat drops hitting the windshield in an ominous rhythm. Amber stood on the porch, her face streaked with tears, both hands cradling her swollen belly as if protecting her unborn child from her own distress. "I have looked everywhere," she sobbed as I hugged her. "She always comes when I call. Someone must have taken her." We began a meticulous search, under beds, behind appliances, in closets and cabinets. No sign of Mittens. I stepped outside, the rain now falling steadily, and called for neighbors to help. Within minutes, kind faces appeared with flashlights and umbrellas, ready to search the neighborhood. "When exactly did you notice she was missing?" I asked Amber as we coordinated the search party. "As soon as I got home. The back door was open just a crack. I know I locked it before leaving." My detective senses sparked to life. I excused myself and went to check our security cameras. In my home office, I pulled up the footage on my laptop, the blue screen illuminating my face as I scanned backward through time. There, at 10:17 a.m., movement at our CK gate. A figure in a beige raincoat, face obscured by an umbrella, slipped into our yard. The angle prevented a clear identification, but the distinctive walk, the careful positioning to avoid direct camera view, someone who knew about surveillance techniques. 30 minutes later, the same figure exited, moving quickly, carrying something bundled inside the raincoat. Something small. My jaw clenched as I zoomed in, trying to enhance the grainy image. A tuft of calico fur peeked out from the bundle. The phone rang, jarring me from the footage. It was Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital. Amber had collapsed in the front yard while calling for Mittens. Early contractions. Possible stress-induced complications. They were keeping her for observation. Rain pounded against the roof as I stood in my office, torn between rushing to Amber's side and following the lead I now had. The security footage was suggestive but not conclusive. Not enough for a warrant. But my niece's cat was missing, her pregnancy at risk. I made my decision. Grabbing my rain jacket and lock-picking kit, tools of my trade I rarely needed in suburban life, I headed out into the storm. The search party had dispersed with news of Amber's hospitalization. Streets were empty as darkness fell early under the heavy clouds. My destination was clear, the large colonial house with perfectly trimmed hedges that never grew a millimeter beyond regulation height. Diane Winter's home sat dark and silent, no cars in the driveway. I circled to the detached garage, staying clear of windows and potential security systems. A detective's instinct is built over thousands of cases, countless hours of observation. Something beyond logic guides you sometimes. I felt that pull now as I approached the side door of the garage. Standard lock, easily picked. Inside, motion detector lights illuminated a meticulously organized space. Tools hanging in size order. Shelves of cleaning supplies arranged alphabetically. And in the corner, a large chest freezer. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I approached it. Why would someone take a cat? The threatening note flashed in my mind. Animals not properly contained will be removed. Surely even Diane would not go this far. The freezer had a small padlock. Amateur security defeated in seconds by my picks. I held my breath as I lifted the heavy lid. Inside, beneath packages of frozen food, was a white towel bundle labeled "Contaminated Animal." With trembling hands, I unwrapped it to find Mittens, her tiny body nearly frozen solid, breath coming in shallow gasps. I gathered her stiff form against my chest, trying to transfer my body heat through my jacket. Her heartbeat was faint but present. She was alive, barely. Something dark and dangerous awakened inside me as I looked around the garage. On a workbench lay a leather-bound journal. I flipped it open to find meticulous records of community violations and corrective actions taken. Multiple pages detailed our infractions, with photographs and timestamps. The final entry, dated today, read, "Removed disease vector animal from Reynolds property. Containment complete." As I carefully rewrapped Mittens and prepared to rush her to emergency veterinary care, my phone buzzed. The hospital. Amber's condition had worsened. Her blood pressure was dangerously elevated. The baby was in distress. The storm outside matched the one building within me. 20 years enforcing animal protection laws had shown me cruelty in many forms, but never had it struck so close to home, with such calculated malice. Diane Winters had no idea who she was dealing with, no idea of the storm she had just unleashed. The veterinary emergency clinic blazed with fluorescent light against the night storm. I burst through the doors, Mittens cradled against my chest, water streaming from my jacket onto the linoleum floor. "Please help," I gasped to the startled receptionist. "Cat hypothermia, found in freezer." Within seconds, a team in scrubs surrounded us. The veterinarian, a woman with kind eyes and efficient hands, gently took Mittens from my arms. "How long was she exposed to freezing temperatures?" she asked, already moving toward the treatment area. "Unknown. Found her about 20 minutes ago. She has been missing approximately 5 hours." The team disappeared behind swinging doors with Mitten's tiny form. I stood dripping in the reception area, adrenaline fading, replaced by cold rage and worry. My phone buzzed again, the hospital updating me on Amber. Her contractions had slowed with medication, but her blood pressure remained dangerously high. Stress-induced preeclampsia was their primary concern now. The veterinarian emerged an hour later, her expression serious but not defeated. "We have her on warm fluids and oxygen. Core temperature is rising slowly. There appear to be minor frostbite concerns on her extremities, ear tips, paws, but cats are remarkably resilient. A fee. W more hours in that freezer." She shook her head. "You found her just in time." "Will she survive?" I asked, voice hoarse. "I believe so, but she needs continued intensive care, and I am legally obligated to report this as animal cruelty." I nodded, producing my badge. "Detective Mike Reynolds, head of the Crimes Against Animals Task Force for the county. I will be handling this investigation personally." After ensuring Mittens would receive round-the-clock care, I drove through the persistent rain to Diane Winters' house. This time, I approached the front door directly. Lights now blazed inside. I pounded on the door with official authority. Diane answered wearing a silk bathrobe, her face a mask of irritated surprise that quickly shifted to practiced concern when she recognized me. "Detective Reynolds, goodness, is everything all right? I heard your niece was taken to the hospital." "Where were you between 10 and 11 this morning, Mrs. Winters?" I asked, my voice professional despite the fury boiling beneath. Her eyebrows arched in practiced innocence. "Shopping at Westfield Mall. Why do you?" Did you enter my property and remove my niece's emotional support cat today? Color drained from her face, replaced immediately with indignation. How dare you accuse me of? We found Mittens in your garage freezer, Mrs. Winters. She is currently fighting for her life at Oak Ridge Veterinary Emergency. A tall figure appeared behind her, a man in his 50s wearing police captain insignia on his uniform shirt. Captain James Winters, Diane's husband. The pieces suddenly connected. This was why no one challenged the HOA, why everyone followed the rules without question. "Is there a problem here?" Captain Winters asked, his voice carrying practiced authority. "Your wife trapped my niece's support animal in your freezer. The cat nearly died. My pregnant niece is now hospitalized with complications from the stress." Captain Winters placed a protective hand on Diane's shoulder. "That is a serious accusation without evidence, Detective. My wife contained a diseased stray animal according to HOA Bylaws Section 14 regarding unauthorized pets and community health hazards. Mittens is not a stray. She has documentation as an emotional support animal." Diane's face hardened. Documentation that was never properly submitted or approved. The animal was repeatedly visible from community spaces, violating clear regulations. "So you broke into my home and stole her?" I asked incredulously. "The back door was unlocked," Diane replied smoothly. "I was performing a routine property inspection as permitted in our covenant when I discovered an unleashed animal without proper identification. I humanely contained it until animal control could collect it." "In a freezer." "A secure containment area to prevent disease spread," she countered. "If I placed the animal in inappropriate temporary containment, that was an unfortunate oversight." Captain Winters stepped forward. "I suggest you take this matter through proper channels, Detective Reynolds. File a report with the station tomorrow. But be aware that HOA officials have broad authority to enforce community standards." The implied threat hung between us. File a report with his subordinates, follow the rules, play the game their way. I left without another word, driving directly to the local police precinct. But exactly as I feared, the desk sergeant was reluctant to take my statement. Evidence was circumstantial. The cat had been removed from the freezer without documenting its location. No witnesses could place Diane in my home, and most importantly, Captain Winters was his direct superior. Rain streamed down the windshield as I sat in the parking lot, fury and helplessness battling within me. The system was rigged. Diane would get away with nearly killing Mittens, with endangering Amber and her baby. Unless... I reached for my phone, scrolling to a contact I rarely used. The state director who oversaw specialized task forces, including mine. I hit dial. "This is Detective Reynolds," I said when she answered. "I need to invoke jurisdictional authority on a felony animal cruelty case." My fingers brushed over my badge and the task force credentials in my wallet. "And this one is personal." By dawn, my task force headquarters had transformed into a war room. 8 specialized investigators gathered around the conference table, faces serious as I briefed them on the situation. Crime scene photos covered bulletin boards, Mittens in veterinary intensive care, IV lines running into her tiny body. Security footage showing the shadowy figure entering our property. The journal entries found in Diane's garage. "This is not just about one cat," I explained, pacing before the evidence wall. "Our suspect has weaponized a homeowners association to target vulnerable residents. We have reason to believe Mittens is not her first victim." Lisa Chen, my most experienced investigator, nodded grimly. I ran background on Diane Winters, Before Oak Ridge, she served as HOA president in 3 previous communities. Each time she left after a few years. Each location shows a pattern. She projected a map onto the screen. Red pins marked homes in former neighborhoods. Elderly residents, single parents, immigrants, people unlikely or unable to fight back. In each community, there were informal complaints about missing pets following HOA disputes, complaints mysteriously withdrawn or never officially filed. Another investigator raised his hand. Captain Winter's influence. Likely, I confirmed. His position as police captain gives them significant protection. The local precinct will not touch this case. That is why we are invoking state-level jurisdiction through our task force. We spent the day building our investigation. One team focused on mapping Diane's history across multiple communities. Another pursued financial records, discovering suspicious payments from the HOA Treasury to Captain Winter's private security consulting firm. A third team gathered statements from former neighbors who had moved away from Oak Ridge Estates. The pattern became clear. Diane ruled through intimidation, using HOA fines and harassment to target those who questioned her authority. Those who resisted faced escalating consequences. Missing pets were just one tactic in her arsenal. That evening, I visited Amber in the hospital. Her condition had stabilized, but doctors insisted on continued observation. Her face brightened when I told her Mittens was recovering. The veterinarian says she will heal completely, though her ear tips show minor frostbite damage, I explained, holding Amber's hand. She is a fighter. Just like her mom, Amber smiled weakly, patting her stomach. The baby is okay too. They say we both need to avoid stress. I hesitated, unsure how much to share. Amber, we are building a case against Diane Winters. What she did to Mittens and to you was not just cruel, it was criminal. Determination hardened in her young face. What can I do to help? Rest and focus on your health, but if you feel up to it. I placed a digital recorder on her bedside table. We need victim impact statements. Your voice matters in this case. While Amber recorded her statement, my phone buzzed with updates from the team. The investigation was accelerating, pieces falling into place. A judge had approved our search warrant request based on the animal cruelty evidence and the suspicious financial transactions. The next morning, under cover of darkness, we executed the search warrant on Diane's home. The tactical team moved silently through the pre-dawn shadows, night vision equipment revealing a home still sleeping. Captain Winters was away at a police conference in the state capitol, timing we had specifically planned for. What we discovered in Diane's immaculate basement confirmed our worst suspicions. A hidden room behind a false storage wall contained small cages. 3 held live animals, an elderly Shih Tzu, a parakeet, and a rabbit, all reported missing by Oak Ridge residents following HOA disputes. More disturbing were the preserved trophies, collars, tags, even photographs documenting past removals. Lisa photographed everything, her face grim. This is serial behavior. Calculated, documented cruelty. Psychopathic, I agreed. She kept records of each animal and their owners, notes on which residents learned their lesson after their pets disappeared. By afternoon, Amber had been discharged to home care. Strict bed rest, but her determination never wavered. From her bedroom, surrounded by medical monitors that beeped softly, she organized statements from neighbors who finally found courage to speak. Mittens, released from veterinary care but still recovering, curled protectively near Amber's stomach. The cat's ear tips showed slight damage, one permanently crooked from frostbite, but her purr was strong as she watched Amber work. She did not just hurt my cat, Amber said, stroking her belly as I brought her tea. She endangered my baby. How many other people has she terrorized? How many animals suffered? I sat beside her, reviewing evidence files. We found records dating back 7 years, multiple communities, dozens of victims. She specifically targeted people she thought would not or could not fight back. She picked the wrong house this time, Amber said, scratching mittens behind her damaged ear. Looking at them together, my pregnant niece and her survivor cat, both damaged but undefeated, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This case had become something greater than animal cruelty. It was about abuse of power, about predators who hid behind rules and regulations to victimize the vulnerable. Yes, I agreed, my resolve hardening. She certainly did. Dawn mist hung low over Oak Ridge Estates as our operation moved into position. 6. Unmarked vehicles stationed strategically around Diane's colonial home. Tactical officers in Animal Crimes Unit vests waited for my signal. Media vans gathered at the perimeter, summoned by our press release about a major animal cruelty ring. This was no longer just a case, it was a message. Through my earpiece, team leaders confirmed their readiness. Our surveillance reported Diane was home alone, Captain Winters still at his conference, unaware his carefully constructed protection was crumbling. All units in position, Lisa confirmed. Ready on your order. I took a deep breath, thinking of mittens nearly frozen, Amber hospitalized, the dozens of other victims we had documented. Execute warrant. The operation unfolded with precision. 2 teams approached simultaneously, front and rear entrances. Neighbors emerged onto lawns in bathrobes and slippers, stunned by the sudden activity in their perfectly regulated community. Diane Winters, this is Detective Reynolds with the State Animal Crimes Task Force. We have a warrant to search and seize evidence related to animal cruelty charges. Open the door immediately. Silence stretched for 30 seconds before the door swung open. Diane stood there in monogrammed silk pajamas, her face a mask of outraged disbelief. "This is harassment," she declared loudly, clearly playing to the gathering audience. "I am a respected community leader exercising my legal authority too." Diane Winters, you are under arrest for multiple counts of animal cruelty, breaking and entering, theft, and illegal imprisonment of companion animals. I nodded to Lisa, who stepped forward with handcuffs. We have executed a search warrant on your property and discovered evidence of systematic animal abuse. Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced by calculated indignation. "This is absurd. I demand to speak with my husband. He is a police captain and—" "Captain Winters has been notified of these proceedings," I continued professionally. "Internal Affairs is currently reviewing evidence of his involvement in obstructing previous investigations." The tactical team efficiently moved through the house, bringing out boxes of evidence including the meticulous journals documenting each violation and subsequent action. News cameras captured every moment as bewildered neighbors watched their fearsome HOA president being led toward a patrol car. Then Diane saw something that made her freeze. Across the street, Amber stood in our front window, mittens cradled protectively in her arms. The cat's damaged ear was clearly visible even from a distance. Something snapped in Diane's carefully maintained facade. She wrenched away from the officers, her face contorted with rage. "They were breaking the rules," she screamed, pointing wildly toward my house. "All of them. The cat was visible from community spaces. The pregnant teenager violated our family values covenant. I was enforcing the rules." Two officers gently but firmly regained control, guiding her toward the vehicle. Her voice rose to a shriek. "I am the one who maintains standards here. I am the one who protects property values. Without me enforcing the rules, this community would collapse." As she continued ranting, a squad car approached at high speed. Captain Winters emerged, face ashen as he took in the scene. He rushed toward his wife but was intercepted by internal affairs investigators who had been waiting for his arrival. "James Winters," the lead investigator announced, "you are being placed on administrative leave pending investigation into obstruction of justice and abuse of power charges." The neighborhood watched in stunned silence as both Winters were placed in separate vehicles. Diane's screams about rules and proper procedure became muffled as the car door closed on her rage. I turned to address the gathered residents and media. Today, the State Animal Crimes Task Force has uncovered evidence of systematic animal cruelty, intimidation, and abuse of power centered in Oak Ridge Estates. We have rescued multiple animals and discovered evidence of many more victims. This investigation is ongoing, and we ask any residents who have experienced similar intimidation or lost pets to contact our task force immediately. Reporters shouted questions as neighbors began talking among themselves, years of fear finally breaking. One elderly woman approached me hesitantly. "My little dog Pepper disappeared last year," she said, voice trembling. "After I planted unauthorized flowers. Diane said he probably ran away, but he never would have left me." "We found records," I told her gently, "and we will investigate every case." As the scene gradually cleared, I walked back to my house where Amber waited in the doorway, Mittens still in her arms. "Is it really over?" she asked. I looked back at the Winters home, now surrounded by crime scene tape, as investigators continued gathering evidence. The HOA had ruled through fear was being exposed. The woman who had terrorized an entire community was in custody. "The case is just beginning," I said, "but her reign of terror is over." For the first time in weeks, Amber smiled without shadows in her eyes. Even Mittens seemed to understand, purring loudly against her chest. The nightmare that had begun with cat toys on a porch and escalated to attempted murder had been stopped. Justice was finally coming to Oak Ridge Estates. The courthouse steps teemed with reporters and spectators 3 months later. Summer sunshine bathed the scene in golden light as I stood beside Amber, whose hand rested protectively on her now prominent baby bump. Mittens sat in a specialized carrier at our feet, her crooked ear twitching as cameras clicked. The judge had just delivered the verdict after weeks of testimony. Diane Winters, convicted on 27 counts of animal cruelty, breaking and entering, property theft, intimidation, and attempted animal killing. The maximum sentence, 15 years without possibility of early parole. Her husband fared little better, found guilty of obstruction of justice and abuse of power, stripped of his badge and sentenced to 8 years. "Today sends a message that no one is above the law," the prosecutor announced to the gathered media. "No homeowners association grants the power to terrorize residents or harm innocent animals." As we descended the courthouse steps, former Oak Ridge residents approached us, many with tearful thanks. Some carried photographs of pets long missing. Others simply wanted to express their relief that the nightmare was over. The investigation had revealed the full scope of Diane's reign of terror. 17 pets removed over 7 years. Dozens of residents intimidated into leaving the community. Financial records showing thousands of dollars in HOA funds diverted to personal accounts. The case had grown beyond animal cruelty into one of the most significant abuse of power scandals in county history. 1 month after the arrests, the Oak Ridge HOA board was officially dissolved by unanimous resident vote. In its place, a neighborhood council formed with rotating leadership and transparent policies. Their first official act was to rename the community Harmony Heights and establish a memorial garden for the animals who had suffered under the previous regime. Today, 6 weeks after the verdict, I stood in that garden watching residents gather for a community picnic. Children played freely on lawns once regulated down to the inch. Dogs romped without fear of unauthorized animal activity citations. Houses displayed individual character, flower gardens blooming in glorious unplanned variety, wind chimes tinkling from porches, yard art expressing personal taste rather than rigid conformity. Amber approached, walking carefully as her due date drew near. Mittens followed at her heels, her damaged ear now a badge of survival rather than a mark of cruelty. "The nursery is finally ready," Amber said, smiling. "Yellow walls. Definitely not HOA-approved eggshell white." I laughed, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Your parents called again. They are booking flights to be here when the baby comes. They asked if I want to join them in Singapore after she is born," Amber said, watching neighborhood children chasing bubbles across the grass. "I told them no. This is home now." 3 weeks later, Emma Grace Reynolds arrived, 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect, screaming life. As Amber held her daughter in the hospital room flooded with flowers from neighbors, Mittens sat attentively in the special carrier we had been permitted to bring, her mismatched eyes never leaving the tiny bundle. When we brought Emma home, Mittens immediately assumed her self-appointed role as guardian. She slept beneath the crib, alert to every sound. The crooked ear swiveled like a tiny radar dish, monitoring for any potential threat to her charges.